Hi there. Today we're going to solve more two-step equations in the form P times the quantity x plus q equals r. An equation like 2 times the quantity w plus 36 equals 114 is in the form P times the quantity x plus q equals r. It contains two factors, p and x plus q. So what they're saying is this is just like a multiplication sentence where I'm multiplying p times this right here. It's considered a two-step equation. To solve two-step equations in this form, there are two basic methods, and depending on the situation is when you would pick either one. Method one, you're going to divide each side by the factor p. So since they think that this is a multiplication operation here, the inverse or the opposite would be to divide. So they're going to ask you divide by p first, and then solve the one-step equation right here. Method 2 is really for if the factor p is not a factor of the constant term on the other side of the equation. So basically it means that if r is not easily divisible by p, you're going to follow method 2. And method 2 just basically states this is a distribution format, so you actually can distribute the factor p to everything on the inside of the parentheses and then solve the two-step equation. Here's our first example. Again, we're going to use method 1 with this because 28 is divisible by 4. So here we're going to divide by 4 on both sides of the equation. And so this will divide out to 1. So I'm going to be left with x plus 3 equals 7. Okay, and now I just have a regular one-step equation, and x is being added by 3, so the inverse would be to subtract by 3 on both sides of the equation. So I'm left with x equaling 4. Here's an example where we have the coefficient is a fraction. And this is, again, a special case where the factor p is being multiplied by, m minus 6. And to get rid of the fractional coefficient, we're going to multiply by its reciprocal. So let's multiply by 5 over 3 on both sides of the equation. Okay, so now that we have that, this 5/3 times 3/5, that divides out to 1. So I'm going to be left with m minus 6. And on the right side, I'm going to be left with negative 15. Okay, now what I'm going to do is my variable m is being subtracted by 6. So let's go ahead and add by 6 as the inverse operation. All right, so minus 6 plus 6 simplifies down to 0, so I'm left with m on the left, and on the right I have negative 9. Again, I'm just going to encourage you whenever you get your answer to check your solution, okay? Because sometimes we can make mistakes with our mathematics, especially if it involves negative numbers. Here's another example. We have 5 times x plus 6 equals 40. So 40 is divisible by 5, so I will use method 1, where I'm going to divide both sides by 5. Okay, so 5 divided by 5 simplifies down to 1, so I'm left with x plus 6 equals 8. Okay, now we have a one-step addition equation. So the inverse of add by 6 would be to subtract by 6 on both sides of the equation. And I'm left with x equaling 2. All right, here's our next example. Again, this has a fractional coefficient. So we know that if our coefficient is a fraction, we have to multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3 over 2. Okay, so now this 3 over 2 times 2/3 divides out to 1. So I'm left with k minus 5. And then negative 4 times 3 over 2, that's going to equal negative 6. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do the inverse of minus 5, and that is to add 5 on both sides of the equation. Okay, this cancels out to 0. So we're left with k equaling negative 1. Okay, so let's continue. Here are some real life examples. DeAndre is ordering tickets to a concert. He buys 3 tickets that all have the same price. There is a service charge of $4.75 per ticket. The total cost of his order is $111.75. What is the price of each ticket? Okay, so the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what is each person's charge? Each person's charge is the price of the ticket plus the $4.75 processing fee. Okay, so this is for each person. Okay, how many people are involved? Um, we have 3 people, and all together, this is supposed to equal $111.75. Okay, so the first thing we do is we set up our equation, and now we have to solve it. So we're going to divide by 3 on both sides of the equation. And since 3 divided by 3 cancels out to 1, I'm left with t plus 475 on the left. And then I'm left with, on the right, $37.25. So each person pays $37.25. And they just basically want to know, if that includes the 475, how much is the ticket price? So let's go ahead and subtract our service charge on both sides of the equation. And what we're going to be left with is t equaling $32.50. So we're going to say that it's $32.50 for each ticket. Okay, so Tony buys 4 shirts at a clearance sale. Each shirt is discounted $3.50 off the regular price. The total cost is $65. What is the price of the regular shirt? Okay, so we're talking about first, how many shirts are we buying? We're buying 4. And what is the cost of each shirt? They actually don't tell you what the cost of each shirt is. All they do is they tell you it's discounted by $3.50. So the cost of a shirt is actually T minus $3.50. Okay, we bought 4 of them, so we're multiplying that by 4, and the total is supposed to be $65. Okay, so now what we're going to do is divide both sides by 4, because that is our P that's being multiplied by the quantity. This divides out to 1, so I'm left with T minus 350, and that's going to equal $16.25. Okay, so this is a one-step subtraction equation. So let's go ahead and add by 350 on both sides of the equation. All right, so the total amount of each shirt is $19.75 is the cost of each shirt. Okay, now I'm going to get into some method 2 type problems. So if you're taking a look at this, normally we would divide by 6 on both sides of the equation, but negative 15 isn't as easily divisible by 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to distribute. So we're going to say 6 times y plus 6 times 4. We're going to expand it first. Okay, so 6 times y is 6y, plus 6 times 4 is 24, and that equals negative 15. Now this now becomes just a regular 2-step equation, where we're going to add or subtract the constant first. So again, our constant is 24. So when we do that, we're going to get 6y on the left, and on the right we have negative 39. Okay, now this one-step multiplication equation can be undid by dividing by 6, and then we're going to get y is going to equal negative 6.5. Okay, and then here's my last example of method 2. Again, 13 is not easily divisible by 3, so we're actually going to expand our distribution first. So 3 times x plus 3 times 2, and that equals 13. Okay, so 3 times x is 3x, plus 3 times 2 is 6, and that equals 13. So let's go ahead and subtract the constant that we have here. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. And we're left with, on the left, 3x, and on the right, we're left with 5. So now what we're going to do, this one-step multiplication equation, uh, is divide by 3 on both sides. So x is going to equal 5 over 3, or 2 and 1/3. Okay. So today we solved two-step equations of the form p times x plus q equals r. Hope that video was helpful. Thank you. Bye.